Welcome to the Crime Redefined podcast, produced by Zero Cliff Media. Coming to you from the US Bank Tower, high above downtown Los Angeles. In our podcast, we drill deep into forensics and criminal investigation from the viewpoint of the defense, as well as explore the intersection of the media and the justice system.
Hey, welcome to the Crime Redefined podcast. We're excited to come to you with another cool discussion today. It's just going to be Dion and I, but in addition to hearing us, you're going to see us on our brand new shiny YouTube channel. So we've got a interesting discussion that Dion and I have had in the past, and I've got a couple of courtroom anecdotes that I want to share with you today that I think are interesting. But this is going to center around the idea of what is true crime? Is it a bad thing? Where does Crime Redefined fit in there? Are we true crime? Are we something else? Dion, give me kind of your thoughts on that before we get into it.
Yeah, it's funny because true crime is really kind of like a brand name, like a Nike or anything else. And it's just like this big tent, and they shove anything that's even remotely connected to true crime underneath this. And you'd mentioned this before. I think we're more kind of true justice, but we fit underneath that true crime. But we look at crime, all facets of it, 360 degrees. So that's from the victim, from, police, from the DA, from, prosecution, everything, forensics. We've covered the body farm, decomposition, which is heavy into forensics, which people don't even think about. So we try to cover everything 360 degrees.
Yeah. And maybe the big differentiating is that we're not hobbyists at this. Like, anybody can look at news stories and tell interesting stories about it and have discussions, but we're coming at it from, again, our unique angle, my background in forensics, your background in entertainment, and how they mesh. But, one thing that should be everywhere where a podcast is, and I'm going to check this, is that this is being done for entertainment and educational purposes only. I'm not testifying here. You're not testifying. We're not giving, we're not consulting on cases. And as you'll see that once in a while, we'll talk about a specific case. But if we do that, it's to bring out the broader lessons in it, to talk about how the investigation was done, maybe how it could have been done better, all of that kind of stuff. So that's, I wish, like you say, Dion, that we could be true justice. Wish that was a thing. I'm trying to get it to catch on hashtags and all that. But, we're under the umbrella of true crime. And I just think it's intellectually lazy to just look at true crime and dismiss it altogether. Because, man, there's all kinds of subgenres in there.
Right. We're just trying to give our opinion on this and our take, and then whatever knowledge that we can bring to the table and share it with everybody.
Okay, so this is the origin of this episode, Dion. So I will, on occasion, testify as an expert witness in court. And I know that anything online about me could come up in court, right? It's fair game.
Right.
And, there were experts that I dealt with in the past who said, oh, I'll never write a blog online, or I'll never have a website because any of that, sort of could be used against me. Well, my take is that, listen, this is a necessary thing these days. People want to see your work. They probably want to see how you talk and how you describe complex things online. And you go into this knowing that, of course, they could show this episode in court right now. It's the same thing when you're doing forensics. When you're taking notes, just expect that note could be put up as an exhibit in court and everyone could see it. So you're doing everything, knowing that can happen. So that's not an issue. And, I've done some TV appearances, Dion, and things have come up that I've said. One is time is the enemy of DNA. And it's kind of funny because that was in an episode I did talking about the Jack the Ripper case, where the evidence is 120 years old or something like that. So, of course, that didn't really apply to the case that we were talking about it. But of course, opposing counsel will try to take some cheap shots. Now, here's the example, Dion. So I was testifying down in San Diego on a murder case, and it came to cross-examination. I was testifying for the defense. And she said, oh, Mr. Anjaria, you have a true crime podcast. Yes, I do. And she said, is it true that you called the defense the dark side? And I was just cracking up, Dion, and rolling my eyes because, yeah, I did. one of our early episodes is called Descent into the Dark Side, which I think is in quotes, if I'm not mistaken, Dion. And the idea there was I was talking about my progression from working in a law enforcement lab to working into a private lab where I worked with the prosecution and the defense to now working all defense. And I was joking how in the crime lab, we would used to say, ha ha, the defense is the dark side. And then on the flip side, there was hyperbole as well, because the defense attorneys were saying, oh, all those crime lab people, they're all, they're just all cheating and they're all corrupt and all of that. So the way I answered it in court, Dion, as I said, yeah, I did say that, but it was tongue in cheek. Okay, next question. She said, oh, did you have an episode called Crazy and Disturbing? Yeah, I did. And was that about cases that you worked? Yes. And was one of the taglines, serial killers and dismemberment are all in a day's work? Well, I don't know, Dion, maybe I got to give her that one, right? That sounded a little bit salacious. I'll give it to her. But I bet you, Dion, if you remember, if we listen back to this, the cases that we talked about were not there just for fanfare. There were lessons in them. There was discussion of the forensic, probably discussion of the investigation and the courtroom. I mean, do I have it wrong, Dion?
No, that's about right. And I think that's kind of what brought us to this particular, I guess, content for today, is that this seems like it's been picking up, more, the more that we kind of our podcast reaches more people, the more that you're getting asked about it on the stand.
I think it's a good thing, right? We're in the big time now. The court, the bar in San Diego and in Los Angeles now knows about Crime Redefined. So we'll take that. But I got it, then she asked me, Dan, she said, oh, and do you do paranormal stuff?
Right.
Again, trying to imply that I'm sitting here with tinfoil on my head or something like that. And so there's two ways you can answer that, right? One is just like, yes. Or you could get somewhat defensive and say, well, that was looking at alternate ways of investigating cases. And sometimes this has been effective. And say, yes, but we got...
Genuine people had success with this. I mean, we brought people on that were experts in the field that actually solved cases that you may not agree with it.
Exactly.
And we to judge them, but we wanted to hear their take and how their unique skill came to solve a case, right?
What's the title of the podcast? Crime Redefined. We're looking at things that are not necessarily obvious. We're looking at the body farm. We're looking at, paranormal type stuff. So, okay, well, what was the upshot there? Well, I talked to the defense attorney afterwards, and she said, well, the jurors found you very credible. So this is what I find, Dion, that when opposing counsel starts these nonsense attacks, they have very little in the case. They have very little to rebut the science that I'm talking about. And what I found, interestingly, is that the more sort of mean the prosecutor is or personal, I found out the better the outcome of the case for the defendant. And that just kind of flows with what I just said, right? That's because they obviously can't rebut whatever science that I'm talking about.
Do you take that as a little bit of a tell that they've got kind of a weak case, so they're just going instantly on the tax and not going over the facts or the forensics of the case?
100%. And also, I think that if you as a witness are likable to the jury, if a attorney is going to get up there and cross-examine you and be snarky and try to cut you up, I think that reflects poorly on them. So that can very much backfire, I'd say. This happened again more recently. So San Diego, the first time, that was probably about 6 months ago, Dion. More recently, I was testifying in Los Angeles on a murder case. And so the cross-exam went something like this. So I see you have a true crime podcast that you spend a lot of time on. Yeah, I got a podcast. I don't necessarily spend a lot of time on it. Implication being, oh, you're like just a podcaster and you're sort of testifying as a hobby or something like that, right? And then she said, well, you make money talking about true crime. Well, that was objected to. So I didn't have to answer that. But what's the implication there? Like we're exploitive true crime podcasts or something like that. And that's a way to somehow sully my character.
Yeah, we're profiting, or you're profiting from it, and we're about as far away from that as possible. Hey, I want to ask you. So the other day, I stumbled across this post on LinkedIn, and it had a courtroom shot of Joe Pesci in My Cousin Vinny. Give our listeners the scoop on that.
So this was just a little bit of a I guess, pushback on these two incidents of being asked about this in court. So I put up My Cousin Vinny as a kind of reminder that if you're going to ask questions in court, you better know what the answer is going to be. And the implication here is that you're trying to smear me by bringing up Crime Redefined, but actually it's a good thing, right? What are some, and this is what I put in the post, Dion, what are some things that we've done here? Well, we've assisted in finding a missing person, or we're assisting in that. We're looking at the reasons for wrongful convictions. We're showing what the roles of other experts are, gang experts, digital forensics. We're talking about technology, MVAC. We're talking about criminal justice reform. We're talking about forensic fraud. So the attorney, if I were to give this thorough answer like this, would have shot themselves in the foot, right? They would see that this podcast is actually a good thing. So the question then is, how do I deal with this going forward? Well, you could do a preemptive strike, right? And you could have the defense attorney just ask you about it. But I don't think it merits it. This is nonsense bringing this up. This says, I don't advertise that Crime Redefined is something that qualifies me to be an expert. It's not even on my CV.
You're not really leaning on that to say, hey,
I'm not leaning on that. So this is just kind of nonsense. So I don't think it's anything that we even bring up and have to worry about. If anything, I think that if I were an attorney and I was looking to hire an expert, I'd want to see someone who's willing to sort of go online for the world to see and have these discussions and be able to interface with different experts and explain the science. I mean, I think it's actually a positive thing. So I the bottom line is I've got nothing to be ashamed about. And
I think it goes kind of also to what our goal is here, and that's just to show, no matter what we're discussing when it comes to true crime or true justice, we just want to pull back the layer a little bit, right?
That's right.
And show what that process looks like. Talk to people that do this for a living, share their expertise with our audience so you can actually see, or someone that's gone through the event. Like, some of the cases that we've talked about when people we've had on was, the ones that are most compelling that really hit home are the wrongful convictions.
Their actual story.
The actual stories. And, you leave this story, you hear this person tell us, and you're thinking, how can you just not go through your life just angry all the time after being incarcerated for something that's been demonstrated in the court that you're not responsible for?
It's incredible how these guys come out of it.
7 years. How much, I think, one of the gentlemen I'm thinking about, they were actually even holding up, he got, paid out, millions of dollars. But what is your life worth? Would you rather have millions of dollars or not spend 7-8 years as a convicted felon in Rikers Island?
Easy call there. Yeah. So, I think that also I think that our podcast is a good adjunct to people who are just kind of looking at the type of true crime where you're just talking about cases and maybe it's not an expert, but it's going to come up things about DNA and you might wonder, how do they do the DNA? Well, how did they do the digital forensics? So I think by listening to some of our experts and our shows, it gives you a better appreciation of how to watch some of these shows on TV or listen to some of the other types of podcasts. So that's kind of our mission. I just thought it was an entertaining anecdote that Crime Redefined is now in the courtroom.
Right. Did they mention me at all? Was I?
I'm sorry, but it's bound to happen. Well, actually, I will just throw you down. I'll say, it's all Dion and his UFOs.
Right, okay. I'll take one for the team then.
That's it.
I definitely don't want to be responsible for you and your team losing a case. That's for sure.
No. It's all good. And like I say, I just answer straightforward. It's not like they found something that was buried. I'm like, oh my God, they found that and I'm ashamed of it. So anyway, that's the intricacies and the interesting things about the justice system.
So once again, we want to thank all of our Crime Redefined listeners, and we appreciate you watching us now on YouTube. Obviously, we haven't changed the rest of our social media posts or where you can find us and listen. We just want to say, hey, we appreciate you. Don't forget to subscribe. And we always want to be consistent and give a shout out to our GoFundMe page for the Terrence Woods investigation. It's obviously if you can't donate to Terrence Woods, the GoFundMe page, just spread the word, retweet it on X, whatever you can, tell your friends, no donation is too small. But go check it out and learn more about that case as well. And thanks again for listening to Crime Redefined.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. And I'm sure we're going to have some growing pains as we do the video content. But I think people want to see that. I think it's more interesting. And I think that probably our listeners, our viewers are going to want to see our guests as well. So thank you so much. Take care, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the Crime Redefined podcast. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at Crime Redefined. Please send us your comments and questions and join us for the next episode.